What if I told you that the real reason behind Ferrari's order so that Hamilton let Leclerc in Baku is much deeper than a simple failed strategy? What if that was only the tip of the iceberg of a silent crisis that is consuming the Scuderia from within? The story begins in one of the most unpredictable stages of the Formula One calendar, the narrow and fast streets of Baku. This urban circuit does not forgive errors and demands surgical precision both in the strategy and in execution. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix 2025 had been a strategic career of controlled rhythm, where the teams managed tire wear and were looking for optimal stop windows. But on Vuelta 42, when it seemed that everything was under control in Ferrari, something happened that would mark a before and after for Lewis Hamilton and its relationship with the Scuderia. Ferrari decided to execute a seemingly logical tactical play. Charles Leclerc, with very used hard tires and suffering problems with the energy recovery system, had to give up his position to Hamilton. This, on the other hand, had cooler average rubber and a superior race rhythm, at least on paper. The instruction was clear and direct, transmitted by Brian Botzi, the Leclerc engineer. We want to exchange cars in Curve 1 and let Lewis try the media. So far, nothing out of the ordinary. A classic strategy in Formula One, when a pilot in better condition has the opportunity to attack rivals ahead. But the context changes everything. Because it was not simply an exchange of positions, but of a silent signal that began to speak stronger than any word. Leclerc not only gave his place, he gave ground, visibility, and prestige within his own team, and did so directly. And that does not happen without consequences, or for him, not even for those who receive that privilege, Hamilton. When Hamilton took the position, he had a clear task: to attack the group that fought for the 5th place, composed of Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, and Liam Lawson. But the British failed to approach enough to launch a real attempt to overtake. Already for the unstable performance of the SF25 or by the difficulty of the surpass itself, the attempt was frustrated. And this is where the true dramatic turn occurs. Ferrari, seeing that Hamilton could not execute the expected maneuver, decides to reverse the order in the last round. Riccardo Adami, Hamilton engineer, throws the message, "Let Charles pass, it is 2.5 behind you. This is the last round." Behind Charles is Hadjar 2 seconds, Charles 1.5 behind, let it pass. What should be a simple position return becomes an awkward, almost symbolic scene. The gesture of returning the position in the last round, without having achieved the goal, exposes Hamilton in the eyes of the world. A world champion who receives and executes orders in a structure that, in theory, signed him to lead. The scene is powerful not because of its visual spectacularity, but for what it represents. It is a reminder that, in Ferrari, the past is never really buried. That the weight of history, of favoritisms, of political balances, is still present in each decision. Hamilton's body language when getting out of the car did not need words. His subsequent silence, his way of avoiding compromising statements, revealed an even more noisy truth. That day, for the first time he signed with Ferrari, he understood that he was in an environment where hierarchies are volatile, uncertain loyalties and promises, many times wet paper. Baku was more than a race, was a mirror. A reflection of Ferrari's internal complexity. A stage where Hamilton looked for the first time clearly and did not like what he saw. Hamilton had received the position with a tacit commitment to return it if he did not achieve his goal. That is an unwritten norm, but deeply respected in the paddock. The problem was not the order itself. It was how he executed, and what revealed that execution. To understand why this moment was so revealing, you have to look not only the action on the track, but the communication that surrounded it. When the order was given to let Leclerc on the last lap, the tone on the radio was serene but urgent. Riccardo Adami did not argue, he did not argue. He simply transmitted the instruction. That is already unusual. In a healthy team, these decisions are justified, they are briefly talk with the pilot. There was no room here. Just a mandate, let it pass. Now. Hamilton's silence was absolute. There was no reply. There was no consultation. Only a few seconds of waiting and then an automatic fulfillment. But it is in that silence where the real drama is hidden. Because Hamilton is not just any pilot. He is someone who, in Mercedes, was used to making joint decisions, to actively participate in the strategy. That I have to receive such an order, so sharp, without discussion, indicates something deeper. Not only was obedience asked, he was reminded that, inside Ferrari, his voice still does not weigh as much as he thought. That pause, that period between order and action, was a mental storm. In that 1.5 seconds, Hamilton probably not only thought of Leclerc. He thought about his decision to leave Mercedes. He thought about everything he promised when he signed with Maranello. He thought about whether he had made a mistake. The impact of that moment was so powerful that it exceeded sports. It was not positions in a race where they did not fight for the podium. It was perception, of authority, of internal hierarchy. Because what Ferrari informed the world and his own pilots is that the figure of Hamilton is not untouchable, that even he must obey without replica, and that the beneficiary ultimately remains Leclerc. One of the largest design failures has been the refrigeration system of the rear braking system. In Ferrari, it was tried to innovate with a double cooling channel solution that, in theory, should reduce heat transfer to the tire housing. However, this solution ended up generating temperature peaks that alter the internal pressures of the rubber. The result is a car that loses return consistency after return. A problem that cannot be solved in the race, either with wing adjustments or with pre-sharp pressure variations. The car not only fails in technical terms. Narrative failure. Ferrari sold a winning project, a car designed to adapt to Lewis, a tool to reach the 8th crown. But what they gave him was a monster with mud feet. Fast on a return, yes, but inconstant, volatile, and above all, unworthy of the expectations that they themselves built. Distrust in the world of Formula One is not announced with words. It is insinuated with avoidance, uncomfortable silences, and decisions that seem techniques but are actually political. And that is precisely what began to happen within Ferrari's box after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Ferrari signed Lewis Hamilton to lead a transformation. Not to be just a fast pilot, but the catalyst for a cultural change. A figure capable of dragging the entire organization towards a new era of professionalism, structure, and results. But in just 3 major awards, that promise has begun to fade, not due to lack of talent or commitment, but for an internal reality that no one wanted to recognize publicly. Ferrari was not prepared to be leading. Baku's incident has undressed more than a controversial decision. He has exposed a painful truth. Inside Maranello, the old vices are still alive. Internal policy, inherited loyalties, decisions that are made for convenience and not for sports logic, all that continues to beating under the surface. And Lewis, who came with the illusion of building something lasting, has discovered that he is fighting an unequal battle. The SF25, that car that should be the definitive tool to reach its 8th world title, has turned out to be a symbol of this contradiction. He promised performance but delivery frustration. It offered potential but demands sacrifice. It is not a car to dominate. It is a car to survive. And in an environment like that of the current Formula One, where McLaren and Red Bull not only advance in performance, but also in internal cohesion, Ferrari appears as a broken organization at its base. The most dramatic thing is not that Ferrari has an imperfect car. That, in itself, can be fixed. The truly alarming thing is that there is not even consensus within the team about the way to follow. Some engineers support Hamilton, others to Leclerc. Some believe the problem is technical, others which is strategic. In that sea of opinions, no one makes clear decisions. And in a sport where clarity is everything, that void is lethal. Hamilton, meanwhile, begins to look around. Not publicly, not with words, but with gestures. The way it interacts with the media. His posture in the briefings. The way in which it answers or avoids answering certain questions. Everything indicates that a deep disappointment is processing. Because for him, it's not just about winning or losing. It's about belonging. Of feeling part of a coherent project with a clear purpose. And until now, Ferrari has not proven to be at that point. The big question then is no longer whether Hamilton can adapt to SF25, or if Ferrari can solve his structural problems on time. The question is much more complex. Can trust be rebuilt? Can a pilot of his caliber stay motivated in an environment where the rules are not clear and decisions are made with a changing criteria? Because if not, the future of this project is committed. Ferrari runs the risk not only to lose races, but to lose Lewis Hamilton mentally. And when that happens, when a pilot begins to disconnect emotionally from the team, what follows is an unstoppable, silent, but destructive descent. A spiral that we have already seen in the past with other big names that abandon Maranello without fulfilling their mission. This open end, loaded with tension contained, leaves us in a scenario as fascinating as uncertain. Can Hamilton reverse the situation and become the leader Ferrari needs? Or will this chapter be remembered as another failed attempt of redemption in the most mythical and most complicated team of the entire Formula One? One thing is safe. What happened in Baku was not an isolated accident. It was a signal, a warning, and probably the first great turning point of the entire 2025 season. What happened in Baku is not just a story that is analyzed. It is a story that feels. Because it goes beyond the data, beyond the final classification or onboard cameras. It is an emotional fracture in one of the most ambitious projects we have seen in modern Formula One. And that changes everything. How do you see it? Do you think Ferrari has betrayed Hamilton's confidence from within, or is it simply the price of adaptation to a team with a different culture? Was the team order a legitimate tactical decision, or a declaration of covert intentions about who really has control in Maranello? Leave your analysis in the comments.